A senior Victoria Police officer has sensationally quit the force. Crystal Mitchell claims her colleagues don't believe in the enforcement of the Chief Health Officer's directions. Dougal Beattie has more.
In uniform and on camera, a sworn officer of 16 years now pulling the pin on her career.
The consequences of me being here today is that I will be resigning from Victoria Police effective the end of this interview.
Acting Senior Sergeant Crystal Mitchell appeared in an extraordinary online interview last night, claiming her colleagues on the front line are suffering and no longer want to enforce the Chief Health Officer's directions.
The police don't want to look you in the eye. You don't want to look the police in the eye. There's this air of uncomfortability about it all.
Among her list of grievances, that Victoria Police had lost its independence from government and the Premier was to blame for the escalation of violence on city streets.
The only reason that protests are illegal is because Daniel Andrews made it so.
The acting senior sergeant, who doesn't work on the beat but in gender equality and inclusion, revealing she attended the protests on her day off.
So I would choose to take my daily exercise, my hour exercise, at the time that these protests were occurring, and I would walk around the outskirts of these protests and observe.
Crystal Mitchell has also quit the police union, instead claiming to represent a group of 200 officers who oppose mandatory vaccinations.
This is a position of not wanting the vaccine to be a condition of your employment.
But the former acting police minister wasn't aware of similar complaints raised within the force.
To this individual officer, what I would say is I thank them for their service.
I sympathise with those frontline men and women that have had to do a job that many of us would not want to do.
In a statement, Victoria Police said the comments in this interview in no way reflect the views of Victoria Police, and from the police union, we wish this former member of Victoria Police well and hope she receives the support she needs. The acting senior sergeant tendered her resignation yesterday morning. Police sources have since reacted angrily to the online interview, telling Nine News her views are an embarrassment not held by the majority and are part of a political agenda. Her comments have now been referred to Professional Standards Command for assessment. Dougal Beattie, 9 News.
Hi everybody, how are you going? Good. Did you enjoy your lunch? Everyone get some food? Excellent, good. So did I, but not too much because I was really nervous, so I didn't want to put too much in my stomach. Oh, that's me. There we go. Thank you. So I think most people in this room would know my big story, and that's that I'm the ex-cop who spoke out against the Andrews government and Victoria Police. But I doubt that many of you know much about my origin story, and that's everything that happened in the lead up to the interview and how I ended up in Matt Wong's studio, in police uniform, doing something that no other Australian officer has done then or since, and that's slam the government of the day and then quit live on air. So over the next 20 minutes, I'm going to tell you who that girl was, and maybe you can figure out why it was me and not anyone else, because I don't know. Not the other coppers who agreed with me, not the other coppers who refused to work the protests or the Ring of Steel or give out COVID fines, and not even the coppers who were retiring and had absolutely nothing to lose from speaking out. So why me? I don't know, but if you can figure it out by the end of the presentation, can you let me know? In about year 7, I was at a school camp, and it was at the end of the camp and everybody was receiving rewards and recognitions, and the prizes were Freddo Frogs. I'd already received about 3 before the teacher who was handing them out faltered, looked puzzled, and then became quite angry. There were 20 Freddo Frogs in this bag at the start of camp, and yesterday we simply thought we'd miscounted them, but today I see that's not the case and there are Freddos missing. Now I want whoever took them to own up right now. She was pretty angry, and I don't think that any child was going to admit to the theft. So I put my hand up and I said, well, I'm happy to give my 3 Freddos back if you're short. She thanked me but said that that wasn't the point. Someone had stolen them and that she was very disappointed. I'd like to say that conscience above all else had been with me always, but actually it had been me who had stolen the chocolate. I never admitted it, and for the rest of my time in school, and maybe even a bit later, I felt bad for not coming clean. My entrance into this world was not a great start. Whilst I was born to a mother who I know loved me, I was born the product of a sexual assault, a home abortion attempt that didn't work, and into a house that couldn't protect me from the sickest acts against children. Despite these challenges, I did thrive because I was loved. I just couldn't be kept safe and loved by my mother, whose mental health challenges and intellectual disabilities meant that I was better off under the care of the state. So just before my 3rd birthday, and after 16 different temporary care homes, I was placed in permanent care and raised as a ward of the state at St John's Home for Boys and Girls. It turns out the state isn't very good at keeping children safe either, from the violence of other children who were damaged and broken, or the sexual acts of teenagers in the home, or from the drugs they brought in the house, or that one kid who set the house on fire, the other one who kicked in our heating that we didn't have any for winter, or the other one who chopped up our goldfish and smeared it all over the bedroom wall. But we were lucky in our home because we had the best cottage parents in the land. Our cottage parents were exceptional, and again, whilst I faced challenges in the care home, I thrived because I was loved by them. I also knew I was loved by God because in the home we were raised as Pentecostal Christians, Maranatha Church, Assembly of God, and Planet Shakers. School and church is what I did, and I guess in some way it was to keep us out of trouble. One benefit of being raised by the state is that your whole life is documented, and you can request a copy of that when you turn 18. This one is from my first year in care. Every year an annual review was done of you by a social worker, and then they would sit in this big boardroom at one of the state offices where a summary of your year would be read out to a bunch of complete strangers while you answered their questions. I got very used to sharing my personal information because I had no choice. I hated it, but I couldn't control it. So I decided to become an open book. If I didn't care about my personal information, I couldn't be upset when a stranger knew something about me. All of us kids in the home went to the same primary school, and at first I was the youngest, and so I bore the judgment of the teachers who had taught the older kids. But then I was becoming one of the oldest kids as new kids came through, and I became known as the problem solver, the kid that everybody reached out to when one of the other kids from my home was causing trouble. The teachers were often too afraid to intervene, and I saw those kids' actions as a reflection on me because we lived in the same household. I also hated that their behaviour reinforced the views and opinions of the peers and teachers that the kids from the home were not quite right. I mean, we weren't, but I wanted nothing more than to be normal like everyone else. By the time I was 16, I'd had enough of government care, and I decided that I was better off and safer on my own. I left care and I left the church. I worked, I continued to study high school, but I also drank, I went out partying a lot, and I did some really stupid things, including running away from the cops when my then boyfriend damaged a train carriage. And I put myself in situations where bad things happened to me. Housing was an issue on a regular basis. I'd either choose unsafe places or, more often, really bad housemates. The spare room of a friend's house or even a couch was enough to reset when that happened, and I just kept fighting to better myself. I knew that getting an education was key to achieving that. So I finished high school, but it was hard. I worked full-time at Amy Insurance during the day, and I did night school 2 days per week, studying biology and literature and completing English and legal studies via correspondence. Unfortunately, I did not get a great VCE result, and the only offering that I managed to get was a full fee placement at RMIT in their criminology degree. It may have well been $1 million. There was no way I could afford to go to uni. Giving up, though, was simply not an option, not even something that I thought of in the awful times or the moments that I'd failed. They were just stumbling blocks, that was all, and each one I intended to move through, keep pressing forward and make a life better for myself. And that's what I did. I wanted to study and I wanted to learn, but I didn't have someone in my corner telling me about the grants or the scholarships or even the package that you're supposed to get from the state when you turn 18 and leave their wardship. I knew none of it. After not getting into uni, I kept switching jobs because I got bored and I didn't like them. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. In 1 year, I had 12 group certificates. It was like a new job every month. I had no plan, except I knew that law interested me, but the idea of studying it seemed impossible. At this point in my life, I was living on the couch of one of the girls that I had spent time with at St John's Home. It was actually her idea to join the police force, so I did. I really struggled in the police academy. They did use the old bastardisation approach, and I didn't respond well. I'd been talked down to, thought little of, and dismissed by outsiders for most of my life, so I wasn't about to let my peers treat me the same way. I didn't understand why they couldn't teach us law and how to shoot a gun without being cruel and mean at the same time. But I did manage to graduate, and it was one of the happiest days of my life. These are my foster parents, the people I credit for who I am today. Thank you. Being a copper completely changed my life. Firstly, living in the police academy meant that I wasn't homeless. I felt I had a respectable job, that I had proven all of the social workers and teachers and school peers wrong. I had become something and I'd made something of myself. I started making more money than I could have imagined, and I was getting an education at the same time. I even got a husband and a chance for my foster dad to walk me down the aisle before he died. I might even get a second hubby out of it if the new filler ever puts a ring on it. I got to do things that I had never dreamed of, and with 9 weeks leave a year, I travelled. I paid off my debts, I saved for a house, and I was feeling secure in my home, my relationships, and my job. For literally the first time in my life, I felt something, I think you call it secure and stable. Sure, there was plenty of things that I didn't like about the job too, but that had less to do with the job itself and more how management acted. But that's most jobs, right? I would get restless if I stayed in one work location for too long, so I was always looking for the next step, the next challenge. And there were plenty of challenges along the way with policing, but connecting with the community, helping victims of crime, showing compassion where others wouldn't, these are the things that I remember fondly, and these are the things that I loved about my job. My police career was a life passion. It wasn't just a job. I was proud of being a cop, proud of what I had come from, what I had fought to be there, and I was proud to work for an organisation that served people, or at least that's what I believed. When COVID hit our shores, I had just reached 15 years as a Victorian police officer. I had worked my way up to sergeant, and it was an accomplishment I was very proud of, and I had just started a new role as an acting senior sergeant in gender equality. I'd had a pretty diverse career up to that point, working in ethical standards, dealing with corrupt cops, crime command on big underworld murders, family violence command, where I created a risk assessment tool that they still use today, and the academy, where I taught recruits in intelligence practice, as well as several busy police stations in general duties. Victoria Police also helped me get to uni. I narrowed my field to become an analyst, and I completed an intelligence degree at Charles Sturt Uni. I also went and worked for the Northern Territory Police as an analyst during my long service leave from VicPol, because what else do you do when you take 6 months off work? Go work somewhere else. With my new position as an acting senior sergeant, I enrolled in and was accepted into a master's degree in police leadership and management. And I really felt like my life was headed in the right direction and that my career was about to take off. Unlike Topher, who saw the writing on the wall very early on in the COVID response, it did take me a while to get there. But one thing that helped was Daniel Andrews and his daily press conferences. As someone who is trained and well-versed in the cycle of family violence, the cycle of abuse in family violence, gaslighting language, avoidance and blame strategies when someone is trying to hold you responsible for your actions, it was pretty obvious to me that what he was saying didn't sound right. I figured that if I could see it, my workmates would see it too. But there simply was no room for discussion in the office of my boss. I didn't know it at the time, but my boss was actually Daniel Andrews' ex-chief of staff. We were the thin blue line between death and anarchy, and our police actions would be what it took to save lives, get out of lockdowns faster, and keep the COVID positive rates down low. When I voiced my concerns to my colleagues, they just parroted the Premier's office propaganda. Some of my colleagues happily vented their frustrations at protesters on our union Facebook page, and you can see some of them here. I was appalled, and my gut knew it was wrong, but nobody at work wanted to listen. I felt very alone and very troubled by what was happening around us. As the lockdowns wore on, I got to know a few people in what was being called the freedom movement. They didn't know me, but I was absorbing all of their social media videos, live footage of protests, market stall information days, thank you, Monica, and commentary and explanations of why we were on the wrong track. I agreed with every word of it, and I knew that it was the police that were keeping the control of the state alive and well. I sporadically kept a diary, but there was no rhyme or reason to it. It was just somewhere to dump my thoughts. This is from August 2021, sanitised for the delicate ears of church and state. Another bleeping lockdown, number 6. They want to crush the Australian spirit. There seems no other logical reason. It was a good turnout at the protest tonight, and I was pleased to see everyday Australians standing up for their freedoms. I can't believe cops sign up for this bleep. They could call in sick. They don't have to attend protest work. Fake an injury, bleep, tell them you've got COVID, anything. Just don't turn up. Don't support this bull bleep. A part of me wishes anarchy would reign. It feels like it's the only thing that will right this balance. Compliance certainly doesn't. Peaceful protests don't work, especially when bleep-tard Andrews made it illegal. Outright rebellion works. There are more citizens than police, more citizens than army. The people have the power in the numbers if only they knew it. If every business opened, if every citizen left their house. I wish people were braver. I wish people could operate in a collective for good. But the government must know the overall psyche of the average citizen to know that they will never truly mobilise on the scale required to achieve domination of government. If we could somehow tap into that psyche and change it, what a powerful voice we would have. True liberty, true freedom. What a fool is the person who gives it up so freely. I was lamenting that people... I was lamenting that people weren't being brave, but I wasn't being brave myself. A month later, my anger, frustration and despair had reached boiling point, and it was all I could do to get it out of my head and onto paper. I bleeping hate Dan Andrews with every fibre of my being. I hate how he has made me feel about my job, the people I work with, other cops who believe in this COVID madness. It's irrational and unfair, but I can't help it. I hate myself for not quitting. I am a bleep weak, bleeping prostituting myself out for a paycheck every week. I want Dan Andrews fired, the Labor Party decimated for what they've let happen to this state. And the Liberals, bleeps think they're any better? Bleeping PM is a Liberal, and look at how that bleep has made things happen. Bleep him, bleep them all. I bleeping hate this life. I want to escape. I could just quit tomorrow, sell my house, pack up the Palomino and hit the open road, leave this state and the bleeping nightmare that goes with it. It's bleeped across the country, but at least you'd be away from the chaos. The world has gone to bleep and not enough people are standing up to do something about it, and I guess I'm one of them. So proud of the workers protesting today. They are the heroes, the protesters. The ones who risk something for standing up for what they believe in. I'm just a bleep, weak, full of talk, pathetic human being who won't stand up and fight for what I claim to believe in. I deserve what I get. The day I decided to quit was not the day I decided to speak out. Quietly quitting would have been an opportunity to reapply, maybe even move states and join another police force in time, or get another government job. Quitting was hard and sad because I didn't want to give up everything that I'd worked for, but speaking out was another thing entirely. And that's what I was angry about, the fact that I hadn't spoken up yet, that it was the right thing to do and I wasn't doing it. I'd already spoken to Matt Wong, and like so many other cops that had reached out to him, and Topher and Rukshan and Avi and Monica, all of them had received calls and messages from aggrieved police that wanted action but were unwilling to take any themselves. So the first time I spoke to Matt, he actually was really annoyed at me. He even said, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" Our first phone call did not go well. He was blunt and agitated, and I was at a loss at what he expected me to do. I was only one person. The day I decided to speak out was the day police shot rubber bullets at non-violent protesters at the Shrine of Remembrance. That was my line in the sand. The next step was real bullets, and I couldn't live with myself if that happened while I stayed silent. I was done. I was prepared to not just walk away from the job, but go out kicking and screaming. It also meant being mentally prepared to walk away from my partner, who was also a police officer, if he wasn't prepared to support me in my decision. That was the hardest part, telling him and asking him if he was prepared to stay. But God bless him, he didn't hesitate to back me. The rest you know, or you can go back and watch it on Discernible. It took a while to let the copper skin fall off. I received this handwritten note from a lady after my interview, and it truly meant a lot. I also received a call from a state Liberal MP warning me that making enemies with Daniel Andrews was not a good move and to be careful. I think I went through the 5 stages of grief, and I spent the longest in depression, feeling sad and sorry for myself, and then finally to acceptance. And with acceptance, you're looking to move on and put the past behind you and create a new future. So I prefer the quiet life these days. I live on a farm, away from the hustle and bustle of the CBD. I tend to goats, and I enjoy the company of my partner and our dogs. I don't like public speaking. I find being around people emotionally draining, and if I'm being truthful, I really don't know what I have to offer this movement anymore, or more importantly, if I want to offer anything at all. I've spent my entire life fighting something, someone, some cause or injustice, and I just don't know if I have the stamina to do it anymore. And that's the truth. Well, it's today's truth. Tomorrow's truth will be standing at the front line of the next battle, torch in hand, screaming at the top of my lungs to launch forward and fight. I know this because I, was made in his image. Paul the Apostle once said, let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up. I know me. I'm a fighter. Always was, always will be.
They lie, the men who tell us, for reasons of their own. Want is here a stranger, misery's unknown. Where the nearest suburb and the city proper meet, high windowsill is level with the faces in the street. Drifting past to the beat of weary feet. I sorrow for the owners of the faces in the street, and cause I have to sorrow in a land so young and fair. See upon those faces the marks of wanton care, and I look in vain for traces of the fresh and fair and sweet, in the sallow sunken faces that are drifting through the street. Drifting on to the straight, restless feet. I sorrow for the owners of the faces in the street. And I wonder, would the apathy of wealthy men endure, for all their windows level with the faces of the poor? Our mammon's slaves in these shall not your hearts in terror beat, when your God demands a reason for the sorrows of the street, the wrong things and the bad things, and the sad things that we meet in the filthy lane and alley, and the cruel and heartless street. And I cried, oh God Almighty, if thy might does still endure, now show me in a vision for the wrongs of earth the cure. And lo, with shops all shuttered, I saw a city street, and in the warning distance heard the tramp of many feet. Pouring on to a drum's loud threatening beat, and the war hymns and the cheering of the people in the street. Must be while the world goes rolling round its course, the warning pen shall write in vain, the warning voice grow hoarse, and kindle eyes all blazing bright, revolution's heat, and flashing swords reflecting rigid faces in the street. Coming near to a drum's